Morning, everybody. We are in the midst of our first actual winter storm here, and this is going to be a longer live stream. We're probably looking at the next hour or so. I'm really going to encourage questions, ask questions in the comments section on YouTube. I'd love to answer them. We're going to go through some deep dives, talk about what's happening, and have just an opportunity to kind of, if you have general weather questions, now would be a great time to ask them as well. This will be quite different than my normal video, so I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on that. If you're having any technical issues, if you can't hear me or anything like that, good morning, Todd. It's good to have you on with me. Thanks. If you have any technical issues or anything like that, let me know. Hopefully the audio and things like that are working pretty well. Let's take a quick first look at, let me jump to this screen here. Which is that's the National Weather Service's updated snowfall forecast map, which changed a little bit. They have lowered our snow totals a little bit. I think that's probably appropriate. I think they think we're going to come in at about the low end of what I was thinking, which I think is probably true. We're going to look at radar and talk about that a little bit. So far, what's going on? I had about I got up at 4 this morning. I had roughly what did I have? I think I had an inch and a half. Right, here's my notes. I have it on a sheet here. Give me 1 second to pull that up. Oh, did I get rid of that sheet? Well, anyways, I had about an inch and a half at 4. I got about half an inch between 4 and 5. We had very small snowflakes at that point. The snow, which usually means that the growth in the clouds of the crystals in the clouds is not ideal. There's usually some temperature issues there, and also some the combination of temperature and also the dew point at different layers of the atmosphere that cause that. So anyways, really tiny snowflakes. You want tiny snowflakes a lot of times for big snow, but these were like pinprick sized snowflakes. So anyways, that was till about 5. Now we do have better forcing and better snow growth out there. So from 5 to 6, I got 2 inches of snow. So 2 to 4 inches. I went from 5 to 6. And it's snowing at a pretty good clip out there right now. So let's take a look at radar and really get talking about what's going on. So I want to start first. Let's go to this one. And see what we've got going on here. You can see in this feed of moisture has been going on forever, and it's really just piling the moisture up on top of us here now across southern Vermont. But what you can also see is, one, we are creeping the mix line a little more up towards southern Vermont, particularly in the areas, in the valley locations. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next hour and a half or so, Brattleboro changes over to some sleet and a little bit of freezing rain potentially. Same thing over in Bennington, as up the valley on the west side of the Green Mountains, we're starting to get some of that mixing spreading in. You can also see, let me show you a different radar view here, which shows very well. That's not the one I was looking for. Where'd we go here? Told you this was going to be a little bit by the seat of our pants. Had about 4, had 2 at 4 a.m., 4 for Scott too. Yeah, in Chester. Yeah, that makes sense. I think we're right now we're about even everywhere. Scott, thanks for that update there, info. Let's take a look here at this is Intellicast's radar view, which is a slightly different radar view. Let me see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. Let me. Yep, got to come to this monitor to do that. Try to make that a little bigger in your screen for you there. What we can see here is, let me show you with my cursor here. So you can see, first of all, finally that band started to move through and we've gotten into the heavier snow. We can also see, though, here's the dry slot I've been talking about the whole time, and that's made its way into southern Connecticut now. So we're not going to snow at this kind of a clip for a long time, which is why we're not going to see huge snowfall totals. We will see decent amounts of snow, and I think we'll be close to the low end of my predictions, but we're not going to see, this isn't going to drop 2 feet of snow anywhere here in southern Vermont, because we're going to get into this dry slot where we still might get a little bit of snow, particularly at the higher elevations, or freezing drizzle in the valleys, but in general, that's not going to lead to huge snow growth at the time. Let's take a look at what's causing this to happen. These are wind streams. And this is probably a little hard for you to see. Let me get my cursor back there. But you can see we've got basically they're showing you where the wind is and also where places where the wind is coming together. And you can see why we've got such an incredible radar feed here and why we've got that strong moisture flow going right now. We've got incredible flow off the Atlantic Ocean. And also we've got flow out of the south and out of the east. And so what happens here is when you get to this line where the flow starts to turn around more to the south, that kind of cuts your moisture feed off down here, which is why this is continuing to move north. And that's why the snow is not going to continue at this clip for a significant length of time. Let's talk about satellite imagery here. Let me change this a bit for you. So you can see what's going on. This is a longer satellite loop, and it really tells the story of this storm. So this low pressure, upper level low pressure system really, and piece of energy at the upper levels is just really incredible. And it really has made the storm take kind of an odd track. It's not normal for a storm like this to kind of take, as this hooked back, the low level the surface low pressure system stayed pretty far to the west for what would be typical of a winter storm for us. Although that is starting, and it is going to translate essentially right over the top of us. Not that usual, which is why our winds and that flow that I was talking about is more out of the east. A lot of times on a nor'easter or on a coastal storm for us that's bringing big snow, that would bring more of a northeasterly kind of wind, which this storm obviously did not bring northeast winds. It brought more of that east and even somewhat southeast winds. That's also gonna, let me bring up a different radar map here. I gotta go back over here. That is gonna show you, where did it go? Nope. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Let's go to the National Weather Service. Showed up really well on one of the National Weather Service's site that had no, that's not the radar I wanted. Let's go this way instead. Maybe? Nope. All right, well, maybe that's not going to happen at the moment. Sorry about that. One more spot to check this out. Yeah, here we go. Nope. Yeah, this actually is going to show up pretty well. This isn't quite the view I was looking for before. Let's see if we can't loop this. This is not a view I'm used to using. One of the things you can kind of see, though, let me pull this back over so you can see it a little bit better, is you can start to see the effect of the terrain a lot here. You can see, and the radar doesn't necessarily place this exactly where the heaviest snow is, but you can kind of see waves. So we've got the higher terrain of the Monadnocks, and then you've got a bit of a hole here as you head up the Connecticut River just to the west of the Monadnocks. And again, because the radar, when they shoot the radar up, it shoots up at a slight angle. Otherwise, the radar signal would bump into the ground. So radar for us here in southern Vermont comes out of either Albany or it comes out of, there's one just west of Boston. Burlington's radar maybe catches us. We're not in the best spot actually because we have mountains all around us, but Gray Mains maybe picks us up a little bit. But anyways, all of those, in order to see above us, they have to shoot at a slight angle to get above the horizon essentially. And so so you don't, because of that, you don't always get the radar echoes to show exactly where they are. But anyways, so you do have kind of this hole here in western or in western New Hampshire, southwestern New Hampshire, and then you get kind of another hole here, particularly west of the Teutonics. But there's probably a bit of a hole also west of the Greens. It's a little hard to pick up in this radar. But essentially what's happening is the air is moving over the mountains from that easterly flow. Sorry, I'm gonna get my hand in the picture, and it comes up over, and as it comes up, that creates lift, which enhances the precipitation. But then it has to come down, and as it comes down, it basically limits the precipitation a little bit, and that means that to the west of the mountains, to the what we would call the lee side of the mountains, today precipitation amounts will be less, which is why while I think we'll still end up in a place like where I live, I sort of live sort of on the east side of the Greens, or kind of right in the heart of the Green Mountains, really. But I'll probably still get, I think, probably 7, 8, 9 inches of snow, which is, like I said, on the lower end of what I was expecting. In a place like Brattleboro and Bennington, down there in the valleys, they're probably, I'm going to guess they're going to be in the 4 or 5, maybe inch range or so, maybe 6 inches of snow, depending on how much they got on the front end. I haven't heard from anybody down in Brattleboro or Bennington, so if you're from Brattleboro or Bennington, drop a comment real quick and just let me know how much snow you've gotten. Okay, another couple things to talk about. So in terms of road conditions, I'm sure it's going to be bad. I'm sure it is bad out there. But one thing that we can do, Vermont has pretty good web cam footage, and there's a few of them that I like to look that kind of give you an idea, particularly of the roads over the mountain. So there's the one in 103 on Mount Holly. Unfortunately, what you're going to see here, it's a little too early to really tell, but yeah, it's snowing in Mount Holly, not surprising. Let's see if you can see anything from the Winhall one. There's one on Route 11. You can see some car lights. This is right near where Route 11 and 30 come together. And often a very a trouble spot on the roads. My guess is the trip down the mountain this morning is rough. So this is going to be true of all the roads, but in general, there's also one in Woodford and Searsburg. Woodford looks very snow covered. Route 9, I think they had the chain up, was in effect. What do you think Stratton ends up with? I think Stratton probably still sees a foot to 14, 12 to 14 inches probably. I think that's about what our ski areas will see. Wouldn't be surprised if a couple of the ski areas came in with closer to a foot and a half. But yeah, 12 to 14 would be my guess for Stratton. So pretty good storm, certainly considering what we've had here. Let's see. What else do we have for the Searsburg? Yep, you can see snow and hard in Searsburg. In terms of another fun feature that I found helpful for road conditions, Vermont does have their plows are GPS located, and so they're a little hard. It's a little hard to see on this, but if you just look up Vermont Find My Plow or Vermont Find My Plow, the Agency of Transportation does have this website, and it does give you a pretty accurate representation of where they're plowing currently. So Route 7 is getting plowed a lot right now. It looks like they're hitting Route 9 pretty hard. I don't know what's going on Route 11 and Route 30. Hopefully they actually are plowing those a little bit more than it looks like, but there's not a lot of trucks out currently. So I'm guessing 11 and 30 are pretty rough at the moment, if that's accurate. I know some of the people I know who have to travel those roads quite a bit use those quite often. So that's something else to take a look at. In terms of power outages, the wind, particularly the wind as you in the Route 7 corridor, seems like it's been pretty bad. We do have some power outages. Green Mountain power, where did I lose Green Mountain power? I may have to, oh no, there they are. Let's see here. We were up to about 1,600 power outages, all west of the Greens. Most of that is actually, there's one big power outage in Dorset and Winhall. So that seemed like we are having some issues with some power outages west of the Greens. And that's probably where the strongest winds will be across the afternoon west of the Greens, and from Bennington up to Manchester, and then potentially up to Rutland as well. So far, nothing up kind of in that direction. Just one outage in Rutland right at the moment. So yeah, in terms of, let's go back to radar for those of you and see if anything, what else has changed. Let's zoom in on that a little bit. Let me change my screen to a different screen. And let's zoom in a little bit, and let's add in, oops, let me add in the county boundaries. That helps locate me. I always get sometimes it can be a little hard to tell without the county boundaries in there. And you can see that we're already starting to get some of this drier air to move in here. So really, we're probably talking about realistically 2 more hours from now of the heaviest of snow, right? This is probably all 2 to 3 inch an hour snow. So we are going to pile up snow real quick for the next couple hours. But then it's going to cut off pretty quick, because if you go south of that, we do have some fill-in happening down here. So maybe we'll continue with snow a little bit longer. We'll have to see how much this fills in. If we get south of there, that's kind of the surface low pressure system, which is actually even a little further east. You can really pick out the swirl here. Probably if I had to locate it right at the moment, it's probably right there. We've got south moving radar echoes there, north on this side, east to west down here. And yeah, so I think right about here is your low pressure system. So that's, and then it seems to be kind of heading in a direction like this. That's basically what was modeled, which would make sense. It would be surprising if it wasn't what was modeled. So yeah, so this chunk here of precipitation that seems to be filling back in could still give us another wave of pretty heavy precipitation. So another hour or so of precip, probably another two to 3 inches of snow an hour between 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. basically. So you're going to get 4 to 6 inches of snow in a lot of places in that amount of time on top of what you had before that. And then you're probably going to get this band could potentially give us another inch or two. So that's sort of how you get, and that's terrain will enhance that. So, if I say 2 for most of us, that probably means that some of those higher elevations along the spine of the greens, the ski areas are probably getting 3, maybe even almost 4 inches of snow for at least with this band now. We'll have to see exactly how strong this band is as it comes through. This moisture off the coast is just incredible, really. Almost hard to believe how strong that is. Let's take a look at some more winds. Let's see how what kind of winds have been reported here across. Let me find my wind. Oftentimes when I'm finding these websites, I'm not trying to talk at the same time, and so it's a little there's not as much dead time. Give me 1 second. Nope, that's not what I want to. Definitely also not what I wanted. So yeah, I'll move you back and kind of show you what we're looking at wind-wise, because the wind actually will continue after probably even after we get done. Let me move this a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And let's zoom in on the northeast. The wind will continue after our storm actually pulls through. See, we're going to make it small, but then we're going to make it much bigger, hopefully. That's the goal. You can see those wind speeds, we're looking at, the oranges are 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts here. Here's we've got some 60 and 70 mile an hour gusts that have happened right along Long Island. But you can see basically just to the west of the greens, that downsloping wind off the mountain is giving you that stronger wind in places like Manchester, certainly up to Rutland. So some additional power outages are definitely possible. I think that's mainly where they're going to happen. I think on the east sides of the mountains, that the lift tends not to, when you have air moving up, going over the mountains, it tends to kind of elevate the winds a little bit aloft, and so we don't mix down the strong winds that are in the lower levels of the atmosphere. But as you get the downsloping, sometimes you do get those winds to cause issues to the west. So I think that's why we're getting the power outages basically on the west side of the mountains. So that should really basically be confined. I think power outages would be confined to the Route 7 corridor. But a lot of people live there. So if you're in Rutland, if you're in Manchester, if you're down in Bennington, something to be aware of. I don't think they're going to be widespread. This will be the kind of thing that Green Mountain Power will be able to get out there and get all of that taken care of, I would say, within 10 hours. I'd be surprised if you went to bed tonight and you didn't have power. I think they'll be down to, at the most, a handful of outages by then. So as they should be able to get out, like I said, the heaviest of the weather looks like it'll pretty much be over Certainly by noon today, even the winds will be starting to let up a little bit, and they'll be turning around the other direction. That's when areas to the east will start to get the winds on the backside, but the backside winds are not nearly as strong with this system as the front side winds. So I don't think we'll have any issues with it'll be breezy in places east of the greens this evening, but nothing like nothing that'll cause any kind of power outages or anything like that. So I think pretty good, well off there. Let me take a sip of coffee here. All right, what are we? Todd is asking, what are we forecasting for Weston at 2,100 feet? Todd, where in Weston are you? At, are you kind of heading west west of Route 100, or are you headed towards Andover? If you're in, so I can just answer, I guess. If you're probably either place, you're probably close to a foot, maybe 10 to 12 inches, basically, I would say. By the time we finish off, would be my guess. Do you know how much snow you have now, Todd? My guess would be you're probably at 5 or 6 inches of snow, maybe 7 inches of snow. But so you probably got probably 5 inches of snow to go or so before the end of the storm. Let's take a look at where was I going to go next? Oh, just to give you an idea of what was kind of unique about this storm, let's go. Let me get back so that I've got everything so you can actually see the whole thing here. My whole screen. Let's go that way. Okay. Let's go back to the history on this storm a little bit. This is one of my go-to sites for model data. If we go to the mid-levels, lower levels of the atmosphere at the 800 millibar winds here, this feed. Let's see, we'll go to the regional view here. This piece of this is at 850. So 850 millibars is relatively low in the atmosphere. It is how much snow from Magic, Magic and Stratton. Magic and Magic probably a little bit less than Stratton just because it's slightly lower elevation. I would say Lynn is saying it sounds like rain or sleet in Mount Holly. I would be very surprised. You might be getting really maybe just wind on the windows, but that would be possible, I suppose. But I think looks it's pretty much been all snow still everywhere. I haven't looked out. I would last time I was outside was just before I started the stream to do snow measurement at 6 a.m. I'll probably actually go out and do one here in about 10 minutes, and then I'll come back quickly to let you know exactly how much snow we got between 6 and 7 a.m. But so sorry, Magic and Stratton. I think Magic a little bit less. I think Magic is in the 10 to 12 inch range as well, where I think Stratton's more of a 12 to 14 inch range, basically. So back to talking a little bit about this moisture feed has been incredibly well modeled. So the reason the storm was weird to forecast in a lot of ways is because the usually the storm would take a track along the coast, and there's a secondary, or on the back kind of northwest of the storm is usually where you get your highest snow totals, is where this storm will get its highest snow totals as well. Those are way back over western New York, Toronto, and kind of just along the Great Lakes there, along Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And those storms are often, and so a lot of times when a storm rolls up the coast, that's sort of where southern Vermont is placed in. And so as you can see, that's where you get a northeast flow basically as the storm comes by, and so you don't get this kind of. It's very odd for us to get snow on the kind of with a track like this. This storm track is actually quite unusual. Usually, a storm tracks either well west of the Appalachian Mountains up kind of through the Great Lakes, in which case we always get we either get plain rain or we get wintry mix that changes to rain. That's where we get, or storms tend to track along the coast, in which case we say mostly snow. And if they're closer to us, sometimes we get some sleet because you can get some sleet to kind of mix in on the backside here. This storm, the cold air there is a lot of cold air locked into the surface, but it's taking an odd track. That's why it's been kind of a messy forecast and a hard forecast from the beginning. Let's take a look at, let me take a quick gander back at radar and see if we can't figure out, we'll update the radar and see if maybe we can't figure out if there's actually a chance that it's sleeting a little bit if sleet has made it all the way to Mount Holly. Let me refresh. Of course, the best way to find these things out is to actually observe them, but I'm not in Mount Holly, so I can't do that at the moment. Sometimes what is possible potentially as well, what will happen throughout the storm, can you see? Okay, I was trying to see what I've got for stuff there, is, let's put that in motion, where you get like these pockets of lighter precip, which is off, this is kind of terrain driven, but sometimes if the precipitation lightens up briefly, you will change to sleet or like a very kind of definitely sleet. Okay, well, interesting. Well, so in that case, Lynn, let me. I'm going to go take so I'm going to take a quick break here. I'm going to go take a measurement because I want to figure out if it's sleet here in South Londonderry as well. That's very interesting. So I will be right back in about 2 minutes. All right, I'm back. Thanks for taking a minute, giving me a second to actually go out. Always good to go outside and actually see what's going on. Definitely sleet-ish, sort of a halfway between sleet and snow here as well. I got about an inch in the last hour, so definitely still some snow coming, but that's interesting. Radar's certainly not doing a good job of picking that up. And it'll be interesting to see if that means that the dry air has sort of moved a bit on top of us, and whether when we pick up some of this filling back in, whether or not we go back to snow or not. I would think we would still go back to snow. I think that's as much about the snow letting up a little bit as anything else. But that will probably lessen our snow totals. Uh, Not a huge, it would definitely lessen our snow totals. So I would, at 5 inches here, if we don't change back over, we probably won't get a ton more. So we'll have to see what happens there. If we actually, so we maybe end up even a couple inches, 2, 3 inches below what I was expecting if the sleet persists. Interesting. Like I said, this was always going to be kind of an odd storm because of actually, if we go back to what we were talking about a little bit ago here, let's go back here. Because of this feature at the mid levels of the atmosphere, or low levels of the atmosphere, and the kind of odd storm track, um, and not necessarily being able to hold in the cold air in the same way that we would necessarily have thought we oftentimes would. In terms of, let's see if power outages have gone back up any. Okay, we're kind of holding pat, so that's good. Doesn't look like any significant new power outages. I would guess that if we're starting to turn to sleet in places even at elevation, my guess is that accumulating snow has pretty much come to an end at for all areas in the valleys. So whatever you've got in Brattleboro and Bennington, in Springfield, up to Wethersfield, up to Newfane, and over on the other side of the greens as well, in Rutland, Castleton, those areas. Whatever you've got is what you're gonna get in those locations, would be my guess at this point. So a bit of that's a bit surprising. So hopefully we'll have to see. For at elevation, we could definitely still change back over and get a little bit more accumulation. My guess would be at the highest elevations, they're still probably getting snow, although not necessarily. I know Lynn is up probably at close to 2,000 feet. So interesting. Let's see what else. What else is that I want to talk to you about this morning? Other things in terms of just helpful things that you can see sometime that are you can see on the radar. Or I was going to, sorry, lost my train of thought there. Back to satellite imagery again. We showed this before, but here's the storm coming through, and as it comes to the end, you can see what is. Let me get close to the end here, and I'll pause, and we'll talk a little bit about. So the reason that you often get the heaviest snow totals back in this area is, if you've noticed, if you kind of go back through the loop, which I don't know if I can see. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can hopefully see the whole thing at the same time as I zoom out a little bit more. So, and you can actually kind of see this. It shows up well on the clouds as to why this happens. So this area here is getting has had snow, and what happens is, as the storm moves by, so you get snow kind of on the front end. So already by you're moving clouds in that direction, and then as the storm rolls through, it actually continues to kind of pile up the snow in this zone about 100, usually about 200 miles west of the of where the low pressure system goes, is where you get your heaviest snowfall totals. And models put out snow all the time, and they try to pinpoint places that are going to get the most snow, and try to provide some terrain effects and things like that. And they've certainly enhanced the way that we think about how much snow or how we forecast snow. But one of the things that I think they still have not done in a lot of ways is kind of beat some of the things that my professors back in undergraduate school used to say. And a lot of times what they would say is stuff along the lines of, you're always going to get that generally your heaviest snowfall band is going to be about 200, 250 miles to the northwest of where the storm track goes. And that's certainly what's going to be the case this time as well, as the storm is, as the storm is moving just to our east, which doesn't put us in the best spot for it. It puts that heaviest snow in western New York. It's actually kind of unusual. Western New York, they get a lot of snow in western New York, but it's almost always volume. Oh, thanks, Todd. It helps if you put the mic back on after. Thanks, Todd and Lynn. Appreciate that. Helps if you put the mic back on after you go outside to measure snow. So Western New York has oftentimes gets a lot of snow, but they get the snow by they get the snow from lake effect snow generally, whereas this storm, because of its western track, is going to give the ability for some of those places to get that significant snow. Let's take a quick look. Let me see if we can see any observations. The 7 o'clock observations would have just come out. We're going to go, one of my favorite place to get just old-fashioned observations is actually the website for my alma mater, which is Plymouth State in New Hampshire. That's where I went to undergraduate school. And let's see, do they have the 7 a.m.? They do. Everybody, so there's not a ton of observation sites, but these are all the airports, and I use that term lightly in Vermont. Airports in Vermont. Basically, everywhere there's an airport, they have there's an well built observation site, which is these are sort of the most reliable temperature and other readings that we get from the weather stations. And so still getting snow as of 7 a.m. in Springfield and Rutland, at least that's what the stations are reporting. So interesting that they there hadn't changed to the sleet that we seem to have gotten at least a little bit of here in kind of along the central parts of the state. Another thing that we could check out, I just was. Oh, I wanted to check out the temperatures and see where we're at temperature-wise. And the best place to get high Weather Underground is really the best spot to see temperatures, local temperatures. Weather Underground lets you, if you have a weather station, you can link it to Weather Underground, and they'll let you, and then they let you basically see. Then it can be seen by anybody on the web. So, and there's a lot of people who have these stations. So here's the Stratton one. This is the halfway up, or is this the Stratton's? I think that's at the summit. So you can see we still do have colder air aloft, which is my guess is we're still seeing snow up at those elevations, probably. But we're basically in the mid-20s still. We have not in the valleys. We do have right here along the Connecticut River in Northfield, Mass, and down in Vernon. We are up above freezing, it looks like, a little bit. So definitely, if you're still snowing, you probably aren't there. You're probably just some light freezing drizzle or freezing rain. My guess is that accumulating snow is definitely done in those spots. You can also see to the east, the warm air is starting to intrude. All that really strong fetch of moisture is starting to erode the colder air in southwestern New Hampshire, probably changing anything they've got over to sleet or kind of a light freezing rain as well. Some of our valley locations to the west of the Greens also getting close to freezing in Bennington, Pownell, and Pownell, and headed up towards Shaftesbury. So I'm guessing a lot of those locations as well probably not seeing accumulating snow at this point. We do have wind speeds 20 knots. Those are some pretty hefty winds out of the east, southeast in Bennington and up in the Manchester area as well. Certainly some of the higher terrain to the west, we got some real strong winds. As you head up towards Rutland, where's Rutland here? The winds are not quite as strong, still a little bit colder up there, so they're probably holding on to snow, I would guess, still in Rutland and Castleton at the moment, probably. Or maybe the sleet kind of snowish. So yeah, we'll have to see. I think I'm probably going to come in a little high with my snowfall forecast compared to what actually happened. So that's sometimes that's pretty typical. It's I would say relatively rare to nail it. It is going to be thankfully finally enough snow so that the grass at my house doesn't pop up through the snow, because that's really this winter that'll be the first time that happens. Let's take a look. Maybe we might be late enough now that we can actually start to see some of the webcams for some of these roads. Let's see if we can see what it looks like down in Brattleboro. Oh, still looks, certainly the I-91, this is the new bridge they just built over 11. Still does look like we're snow covered there, and that looks like snowfall, although could be sleet, a little hard to tell from the webcam picture. Let's see where else we could, if we go west along Route 7 down in Bennington, what's it looking like there? That looks like they've either changed to sleet or that might even be rain, although still snow covered there. So travel looks like it's still kind of rough, even down in Bennington. It doesn't look like they've got, looks like maybe just 2 to 3 inches of snow there. A little tough to tell. Looks like it's windy too. It looks pretty windswept. As we head up towards Hartford on 91, definitely still snow there. Looks like basically all snow, although that's maybe some sleet there. There's pretty good visibility there, so that might be sleet there as well. Let's see, Mount Holly. That is, whatever's coming down is coming down pretty hard there in Mount Holly at the moment. That picture is as of 7 a.m. So let's see if you can see what's going on Route 11. It looks like sleet there, probably Route 11. Road doesn't actually look too terrible. Looks like they've been out plowing pretty well, actually. So that's good in terms of travel-wise. Maybe not too bad there in on Route 11. Bill, temp was 20 at 4, 25 at 7. Yeah, we're definitely warming up pretty quickly here, Bill, as we go through the morning period here. Let's check those power outages again, see what's going on. They are creeping up. So particularly if you're in anywhere west of the greens and you happen to be seeing this, you're obviously gonna, if your power's out, you're probably not watching, although maybe. So you definitely want to be prepared for power outages west of the greens. Like I said, usually anything under 10,000, usually they get Green Mountain gets back online pretty quickly. It's really only when you start to jump into the 20, 30, 40,000 range that it starts to take them more than a day to get power back on. So yes, there are some power outages. My guess is we're going to be able to get most of these areas right back online relatively quickly. Although that is interesting, just the difference in wind. I've had almost no wind. I'm in a pretty wind-sheltered spot. I don't get a lot of wind where I am in South Londonderry anyway, but I've seen almost no wind out of the storm so far. And to see places that are actually having enough wind to cause some power outages to our west is pretty impressive. Let's take a look at, let's update the IntelliCast radar. And I think this is starting to tell the story a bit. Let me zoom in on that again as to where we're at. I think definitely accumulating snow, there's not going to be that much more at this point, particularly since we seem to be changing over to an extent. If we go and we take a look, you can see we had the radar echoes got really strong and then they've sort of lightened up a little bit. Probably what happened there is what's called a gravity wave, which is when you get this. Oftentimes, there's a lot of lift in the atmosphere, and it kind of essentially it's not actually a gravity wave because that's actually a thing, but that's not actually what it is. Yeah, so I bet it's windy where Lynn is. Yeah, if you're kind of at a higher elevation where there isn't in places, she's up in Mount Holly. I'm sure it is quite windy, and you're probably at the worst of your winds right now. Wind should let up within the next hour, I would say. It'll still be breezy, it'll still be windy, but the worst of the wind should be in the next hour here across southern Vermont, and particularly probably right about as bad as it's going to get in a place like Mount Holly right now. So what happens is, basically with extreme lift, which we've had in the atmosphere, as that kind of bounces into the stable layer, which is the stratosphere, which is at the top of like the weather-producing part of the atmosphere, and it sort of causes a ripple at the top of the atmosphere to go across. And as the ripple proceeds across, it gives you a little bit extra lift, and then also as you get into the lee of the wave, just like a wave on the ocean. You get a little bit, the precipitation intensity will wane. And you can kind of see that as this, it's pretty easy to often tell when that's happening because you can watch the radar echoes get stronger, which you see a lot of these dark blues, and then you see them starting to light up here. And that's probably and when that happens, where we're at precipitation wise now, if we get any, whenever precipitation lights up, we are sort of likely, it seems like, to turn more towards a kind of a sleety, very dense snow. That's another thing that's probably happened with the very small crystalline snowflakes we got early. We didn't get a lot of fluff at the beginning, so we sort of that snow, even though it was cold and that was all snow, say before 4 a.m. at my house, I only had 1.5 inches when I woke up. I was somewhat surprised because there was no fluff factor there, because it seems like the crystals didn't grow real big. We had the snowflakes were so tiny; those packed together pretty tight. Bill, I'll answer the shadowing question in 1 second. They pack together real tight, and it makes for denser snow, which can make the difference, right? So we might get the liquid totals approximately correct, we were looking at like 1.5 inches of liquid equivalent, which often is like 18 to 20 inches of snow for us. But I'm going to guess we're pretty dense out there. It seemed like it the last time I went outside to measure about 15 minutes ago. So shadowing is what is the term we use when um, wind goes over a mountain, and then you get a shadow of precipitation to the west of it, because as more moist air goes up, it hits the mountain, and it forces the air to go up because it can't go through the mountain, and that provides extra lift, which means you wring out a lot of moisture on the windward side of the mountain. And then as you go over and the winds and the air starts to move back down into the valley, that air actually, it's already had most of the moisture wrung out of it. Plus, descending air also decreases the amount of precipitation you'd get, and so that's called shadowing. And the places it does we don't get a huge effect from that here. Our mountains aren't big and aren't so tall that they cause huge issues with that. But like that's essentially what causes a lot of the deserts in the world. So the deserts in Eastern California are entirely caused by that. You can have basically you have the Sierra Nevada, not the Sahara, but the Sierra Nevada. This is what happens when you talk for an hour straight. Mountains there. As air goes over those mountains, all the moisture falls on the in that case on the west side of the mountains as you get Pacific moisture coming on shore, and then it basically never rains on the east side hardly at all. That's why you get these big desert areas to the east of mountains. And so that's essentially what shadowing is. We can get it here in Vermont. Southern Vermont, we don't tend to get it a ton, especially when we have a nor'easter, more of a proper nor'easter where the track's a little more offshore. We don't tend to get it a ton because the wind direction sort of comes not down, doesn't come as right across the mountains as this one has. With a more easterly fetch of this storm, because of its positioning, we are getting a little bit of shadowing in the valley locations. Places that often get shadowing during storms, northern New Hampshire, which gets lots of snow, but it gets it for very different types of way than most of the rest of New Hampshire does. So if you're north of the White Mountains, you're up in like Pittsburgh and far northern New Hampshire, and this is true for the Northeast Kingdom in Vermont as well. They don't tend to get snow out of a lot of the coastal storms because all that moisture gets wrung out over the presidential mountains. So Mount Washington and all the rest of them, they get all the snow. They get snow on the other side when they get upslope snow, and when we get any of that kind of moist northwest flow. So they don't tend to get big storms in up there. They tend to get persistent snow, where it will just snow if you have a somewhat moist flow out of the north. Coming from the northwest, it can snow for days in a place like that, and you get 2, 3, 4 inches of snow. My mother-in-law briefly lived or not briefly, for a couple of years, she lived up in Pittsburgh, and she worked in Stewartstown. And one winter, she was making that drive every day along Route 3 in northern New Hampshire, and I think she said it snowed basically at least an inch or two every day for like a month. And so, but not because you got any big coastal storms, which is what causes most of the snow for us here in southern Vermont, and certainly up into central New Hampshire and as well. So, yeah, there's my extended discussion about shadowing. That was a great question. Any other questions? Certainly, if anybody's got any other random weather questions as we sort of get close to wrapping up the stream, now'd be a great time to ask them. I'd be happy to try to give my 2 cents on any weather questions you've got. Let's take a look while we're waiting for those. Let me change over and look at radar. Slightly different view of radar here. Wow, Todd, only 2 to 3 inches. Wow, that's surprising. My guess then for you is I'm then not a tremendous amount more. That's really surprising to only have 2 to 3 inches where you are at. Very surprising. So I had 5 inches at 7, Fred. So right here in South Londonderry. So surprised. We're definitely going to end up on the lower end, maybe the far lower end, maybe significantly under in some places. If we're only seeing like 2 to 3 inches in a place like Weston at the moment. My guess is we only see another maybe inch or two of additional accumulation as we are getting close to the to getting the dry slot and basically kind of being more of a sleety snow than anything else here at this point. Let me take a look. Temperatures still. Let's take a look at temperatures. Let's go to that other screen here. And let's zoom out a little bit. Let me refresh. Let's see if the National Weather Service has any. Sometimes, I don't know if they've got any of their snow totals, any snow location totals out yet or not. Let me see if we can't find any of those. Where did I lose my... Snow and ice observations. Yes, that's what we're looking for here. So what do we got here in Vermont? We've got 6 inches. This was at 6 a.m. in Wilmington. 4 inches in Townsend at this at 5:15, so probably about 6 inches there as well, I would guess by now. Wallingford 4 inches. So it seems like pretty much a that's 2 inches at 6 a.m. up in all the way up in Randolph. So it does seem like we're basically going to be kind of locked in at that total, and we probably will at the highest elevation squeeze out another couple inches here and there. Wind so strong that we have bare ground right next to huge drifts. Yeah, that's it for Lynn and Mount Holly. If you're in one of the windy places, that will definitely continue to be something that you'll see happen, where you get dramatic difference in how much snow you get, and measuring becomes very difficult. Technically, the way that you're supposed to do that to get a accurate measurement, and sometimes it's almost impossible, is you go and you find 3 locations. You try to find 3 places where it's not a drift or a place where the snow has drifted from, and you measure. Sometimes that can be almost impossible. So snowfall totals will be hard to come by in some of those locations if you're a spot where you've gotten a lot of wind. So we'll have to see about that as well. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of wind, which is normal. Southland area tends to be very sheltered from wind, so I'm not usually that aware of what's going on wind-wise. So that's where we ended up with the 5 inches of snow roughly. Like I said, about 15, 20 minutes ago. So let's see, where was I at here? Any other questions here? Otherwise, I'm probably going to wrap up here in the next couple of minutes. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. It's been fun. I know this is sort of rambling. This is something new I might try to do during storms as we're getting kind of the Nowcast on things, and try to give opportunities for you to ask questions and things like that. I would, if you ever have any questions, certainly weather-wise, I would encourage you to continue to ask away, and I will hopefully have opportunity to answer those. And yeah, any last questions as we go? Thanks for everybody who asked questions and interacted this morning. Oh, while I've got you here, let's take one little look at what's potentially coming for the future. This is not something I would do on a normal under normal circumstances, because it's not helpful, but to talk oftentimes about models. But just to give you some idea of what things look like going forward, one of the things that is pretty locked in, we're in a pretty good pattern here for additional cold and snow. So let me just kind of show you here. This is this is upper level pattern. And you can see we're basically in a trough going forward, in general area of general troughiness for the next for the next couple weeks probably. Looks like we're kind of in there. We've basically flipped the pattern from where we were at about around Christmas time. which means that we are likely, and there are several times where the models have tried to pop up storms, we are likely to see, at a minimum, will be relatively cold. Not necessarily not necessarily with the huge sub-freezing kind of temperatures that were sub-zero kind of temperatures we had, but we could see some of that. But will be generally cold, probably colder than average over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So it'll probably be mostly below freezing. So whatever we've got on the ground will kind of stay. And then we will probably also be this is a favorable pattern for some chances at snowstorms. So I would say it's likely that we'll have another 2 or 3 potential storms that come through in the next over the next 2 to 3 weeks. The next chance, the storm that would potentially impact us, and it's way too early to have any details on, would be next, probably either next weekend or Monday. There is a piece of energy that the storms have kind of been all over the place with, or the models have been all over the place with, as they usually are out at 7, 8, 9 days out. But there is energy there, and the pattern is overall favorable for an East Coast storm. So my guess is we will probably at least have the potential for that to happen. So I will certainly keep you up to date on that. For the rest of the week, the next few days looks relatively dry. We do have a weak clipper system kind of moving through with a few flurries probably on Wednesday. I'll have a detailed work week forecast out for you tomorrow morning, since today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so try to get out there, try to enjoy your day if you can today, get the shoveling done. Hopefully the sleet is not doesn't make the shoveling too much of a bear, although I'm sure it's not going to be great shoveling today. And thanks for joining me as I kind of finish out. Probably most of you know this, but I pastor as well. That's what I do for my normal job. And one of the things, I pastor as an American Baptist church in South Londonderry. And one of the prides of our denomination, which particularly in the northern United States is mostly a white denomination, but it was Martin Luther King Jr. was affiliated with our denomination. And so as a day that we try to celebrate him, just try to remember the kinds of things that he did in his life, and try to be just be there, be mindful of that as we go through the day today, and try to work in the ways that we can to make sure that people are indeed treated according to the content of the character and not the color of their skin. So yeah, just a final thought as we close out today. And thanks for everybody for joining me. And I will be back, like I said, tomorrow morning with your work week forecast, and we'll have to see what happens potentially next weekend. That's the next chance of the storm. All right, thanks everybody. It's been fun, and we'll see you again real soon.